Hey, what's up, everybody? If you don't know me, my name is Clage. I have been playing Guilty Gear competitively for 18 years. You probably know me better in the past half decade or so for my commentary work, especially at Frosty Faustings and such. And I just wanted to make a video about my thoughts on the Guilty Gear Strive beta that's been going on this weekend. Had a chance to play the versus CPU mode quite a bit until they got the servers online. Played a decent amount of matches when I could get them to work, which, you know, you would expect a stress test beta to have its issues getting connections and all that, so that's not a big deal, but was able to get a healthy number of matches in, and I just want to give my thoughts and input on what I think is going well for Guilty Gear Strive, what I would like to see maybe be different from a perspective of the messages we've been getting from Arc-Sys, and just my general input. Keep in mind, just like any opinion video on the internet, I'm just another moron online. These are my thoughts and my thoughts alone. If you disagree, totally cool. If you have your own thoughts, I welcome you to engage with me in the comments and tell me what you think. But I just want to give my thoughts and kind of give a primer of what I'm going to be giving on the survey that we're allowed to give our feedback for. So let's start with the non-gameplay pros and cons first. Before we get into the meat of, you know, what I think is good or not good revolving around the gameplay itself. The game, as you can see, I've got some footage of when I was playing the CPU back here just to kind of have something interesting to look at while you're listening to my dumb voice. The game still looks gorgeous. The animations are super fluid. Don't mind the recording that I've got going on here. It's not going to be the highest quality just because of the nature of recording with OBS, but the game's gorgeous. The animations look great, especially for how early this game is. The backgrounds are gorgeous, and it's kind of mind-blowing that this is a PS4 game. I'm really pleased with the art direction in general and where it's going. Where the look is not so hot is the UI. Right before this beta came in, we were told we were getting an updated UI, and there's been changes. There's definitely been some alterations. The UI is still just... it feels bad, man. The biggest things I can talk about are that information needs to be more clear, especially in the middle of the matches. The fact that the risk gauge is still pretty hard to see, and the burst is such a small part of the screen. You can kind of see, you know, burst is right up there by the portraits for each character, and the risk gauge is right under it, which is really hard to see, is a big deal. These things need to be super easy to find. They're important mechanics to the core of playing Guilty Gear, and it needs some work. They could be done so much better. The other big thing, moving that information with the character portraits to coincide with the amount of health you have is just not good. I want to be able to look at the screen in a static area and see what's my burst meter at, what's my opponent's burst meter at, how much risk am I facing down if I've been blocking a long string or something like that. Those need to be way better presented. And then beyond that, aesthetically, the UI still just feels kind of plain. The menus feel very placeholder still. They don't feel like they have that Guilty Gear aesthetic. They feel very just like basic dashboard-like, and they don't have that, you know, that oomph behind it that I would want for a Guilty Gear game. You know, those are stylistic. Those will probably change as we go on, but the stuff like the burst meter and the risk meter is not just an aesthetic problem. It's a gameplay problem. That is something that's core to the gameplay of Guilty Gear. The combo counter is another big point. The combo counter enlarges the more hits you get, and when you start getting into double digits, I mean, the combo counter takes up the entire background, and it's just it's too much. It's silly. It's a bunch of extra noise that you don't need going on, that's distracting from the core, which is, well, the match that's being done in the foreground. So I know they just overhauled the UI, but it still feels very unpolished and needs a lot of work, in my opinion. And I think that's an easy fix. Again, I still think a lot of this is probably placeholder. Keep in mind, this game is at least 7 or 8 months away. This is not going to be finished soon. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go along here. Only other thing with like the presentation side of things, I feel like the characters might be a little bit too big. Like, it makes the stages feel kind of cramped because the characters are so big and they take up so much of the screen, and it doesn't feel like you get a lot of the camera zone out we used to get with Guilty Gear when you're, playing at long distance or playing a game of neutral. That's more of a minor gripe. I don't think that's that big of a deal, but it is something to note with how the game is looking. Presentation-wise, following up the online lobbies that we got to see for the first time, they're terrible. I can't sugarcoat these. They are bad. Top to bottom, they feel unintuitive. They feel janky. Now, granted, a lot of that had to do with the fact that it's the first time they're network stress testing this, and I think that only added to making it feel worse than it probably really is. But the lobbies are just... They don't really bring anything to the table for anybody, and it's really strange. Pardon me for a moment. You have these cute pixel that look like indie game avatars, and they're neat. And before I get too deep into kind of railing on the online lobby system, I do have to stop and give a big praise to Arc-Sys, because all the options for making your avatar are completely non-binary. Even for the body type, they don't list it as like male and female. It says body 1, body 2, and that's excellent. Awesome. More non-binary choices in games. Good representation. That's really smart, and I'm very happy to see that. That's about the only big praise I can give to this thing. The rest just feels so bad. It's unintuitive to start a match with someone because everyone is just garbled on the same screen, and you're supposed to take out your weapon and approach someone. But it's really easy to just walk past them because of general desync. Now, again, maybe this gets better with better coding and stuff as we go along. But in general, it's just unintuitive, and it feels like it has absolutely nothing to do with Guilty Gear. Like, I can appreciate trying some new things. I know online lobbies have basically been the same for a while now, but they also weren't broke. Like, there's nothing wrong with having the arcade stations. You sit down, the other person sits down, sync up, let's go, let's play a match. But this just feels like changing for the sake of changing and being arbitrary, and it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know who it's meant to appeal to. I don't know what it's trying to accomplish. It just kind of feels like we had an idea and we threw it in there, and maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe they're spitballing and wanted to get people's input on it, but man, it doesn't feel good. The online lobby is a problem. It needs overhauled, if not completely scrapped and started from scratch. But we'll see. That, again, way out. They haven't even implemented the new netcode yet. There's going to be a long ways to come with the online portion of this game. So I'm not going to worry about that too much. That's something that's easily fixed because it's not directly gameplay related, but it is experience related, and it makes the experience far worse, in my opinion. And from what I've seen, most people share this opinion. This is the one, like, gripe that everybody is harping on, that is like, man, this feels bad and I don't like it. So now that I've talked about the general non-gameplay stuff, presentation, UI, etc., I want to talk about what you're probably here to hear about, and that's my thoughts on gameplay. As I said, I've been playing Guilty Gear for 18 years. I'm an old-ass dude who's been playing since Guilty Gear XX. And what I want to do is, I don't want to approach my thoughts and critiques on gameplay from my own personal perspective to decide everything. It's way too easy for me to just be like, I've been playing Guilty Gear since forever, and stuff is different now, and I don't like different. Different bothers me. That's not constructive. That doesn't help anything. So how I want to approach my discussion on gameplay is looking at it from the perspective of how Arc-Sys has delivered their message to us during the development of Guilty Gear Strive thus far. And so what I'm really going to kind of start with is, in my opinion, Arc-Sys' message to us, combined with what we've seen in the Guilty Gear Strive beta, is very inconsistent. It feels like the messages we got from the devs about wanting to simplify system mechanics a bit, not make them so robust. There's just so many system mechanics, so many things to learn about for Guilty Gear. they wanted to tone that down, make it a little bit easier to get into if you've never played Guilty Gear before, or if you've never played a fighting game before. So that's kind of been the overarching message, pruning out some of those over-the-top system mechanics, simplifying them, homogenizing them, and being more approachable and likable for newer players. That was a goal they've stated right out of the gate. They want to attract new players to Guilty Gear. This game is not set in the mindset of just trying to get everyone who loves Guilty Gear to play it again. They want to bring in a new set of people, and that makes sense. You want to broaden your potential audience for a product. That makes a lot of sense. But in my opinion, I feel like Arc-Sys is failing to do that with the changes and design decisions they've made thus far in Guilty Gear Strive. So I want to kind of point out what I feel is contradictory to that message we've been getting. And I'm going to start first and foremost with Gatlings. Gatlings are the mechanic that's been in Guilty Gear forever, the ability to chain various normals together for both combos, block strings, general pressure, all that. In the past, Gatlings were super easy to understand. You can almost always, with very few exceptions, chain your normals into the next higher version of a normal. You can go punch to kick, kick to slash, slash to heavy slash, etc. And that system has been vastly overhauled, and it doesn't feel like it's been overhauled in a way that has any real purpose, other than it feels, one, very restrictive, and two, it makes gameplay in general feel very stiff, which is not something you want when you're talking about Guilty Gear. One of Guilty Gear's biggest strengths is its fluidity, its freeformness, and the Gatling system in Strive right now really takes away from all of that. You can't Gatling light hitting normals into anything anymore. If you hit the punch button, the only things you can Gatling into for the most part are doing rapid fire punches, whether it's standing punch or crouching punch, and then Gatling into command normals from those. And many characters have had their command normals toned down, not the strength, but the number. They seem to have maybe 2 for each character right now, it feels like. I'm probably missing on that. There's probably characters with more, but I've been playing Soul. He basically has 2. He has forward heavy and forward slash. This just feels super limiting, and not in a way that makes me go, oh, okay, we've taken out a lot of the routes and decision making, so new players will be able to grasp this easier. For me, it's the opposite. This system is having unintended consequences. For example, if you want to hit confirm from a light normal, which is a very common thing in Guilty Gear, catching someone with a crouching punch or a standing punch that's very fast and interrupting them, and then confirming either into a knockdown or to a small combo is kind of hallmark. That's a big part. And now, if you want to do that, the only real option for doing so is doing links. Some of the characters, I don't know if they all have them, but some of the characters have the ability to link like their stand jab into their stand kick into a special. And if you want new players to feel at home and feel like they can jump right in, that's really counterintuitive. Links are an advanced fighting game concept. I know a lot of games have become based around links. Street Fighter 4 was all about links. Street Fighter 5 has link-based stuff. Links they're not necessarily insanely difficult, but they are a barrier to entry, without question. That's something that you have to learn and really drill some muscle memory to be able to utilize freely in a match. And I just don't know what the mindset is of why the giant overhaul of the Gatling system. Being able to chain multiple normals into one another offers a lot of freeform for pressure. It offers the ability to just jump right in and go, hey, I want to make the opponent block for a bit. Well, I can just do punch, kick, slash, and then maybe cancel that into a jump or a special. That's gone. That's just not here. The Gatling tables are very small, very specific, and have very rigid rules right now. And that's just, I don't know, that takes away a lot. It makes pressure feel very mundane. It doesn't feel like you have a lot of interesting options anymore. And like I said, it makes everything feel stiff. And you don't want Guilty Gear feeling stiff, in my opinion. And if you're a new player, you don't want a game feeling stiff. You want stuff to feel smooth and fluid. You want to feel like when you push buttons in succession that you're accomplishing something and being rewarded for it. And this is, again, another one of those design choices that right now is not doing anything for the game. It's not going to, appeal to new players. It doesn't really simplify things because now you've brought in the idea of limiting options and having to do stuff like coming up with links or coming up with, more obtuse ways to get full hit confirms. And then you take it to the other side, you're not appealing to your old player base either, because now you've got this system that used to be a major free-form part of your game, and now it's very restrictive. And I think Gatlings just need to be overhauled drastically right now. I'm all for changing rules of base mechanics in Guilty Gear. I don't expect Guilty Gear Strive to play like Guilty Gear Xrd. I don't expect it to play like Guilty Gear XX. What I do expect is if Arc-Sys is going to change core mechanics, things that are key to Guilty Gear, that there's a reason behind it. And if that reason is we want to appeal to new players, cool. At least you've told us what you're doing and you have a plan, so execute that plan. And right now it does not feel like that's being executed, especially with the Gatlings. Pardon me one more moment. To follow that up, air dashes. Air dashes have the same problem, in my opinion. So air dashes have been given startup on the forward air dash, where the Devil May Cry looking double jump symbol flashes, and you kind of have to wind up before you start air dashing forward. And this, again, is going against that design philosophy for a couple reasons. The biggest is the air dash is cancelable. You can cancel it with faultless defense, or you can cancel it with a fast normal, and it destroys the momentum of the air dash. You don't do the full air dash and then float down anymore. Now you basically ramp straight down. It's like a very toned version of a triangle jump, if you will. To put it into Guilty Gear perspective, this is the equivalent of giving every single character something that is akin to Raven's dash mix-up in Xrd, where you do the swooping air dash and either go into normals, or you whiff a normal so that you instantly land and do a ground-based mix-up. This is super unintuitive for a new player. The old air dash system is very straightforward. You dash in the air, you go a set distance, you can have these actions during that set distance, and then it's over. It's so easy to understand. This now, you're asking players to learn not only how to deal with the startup of an air dash, you're asking them to learn that there's two different kinds of air dashes now. There's the normal one that you let it rock and let the full distance play, or maybe you want to cancel it and try to go low and force some kind of mix-up or some weird air dash mix-up, which can be good for depth long-term, but again, the message we've got is simplification and trying to make the initial hump for new players not so burdened, such a big burden. And this, again, is the opposite of that. In addition, the startup on the air dash, man, it feels bad. Same kind of old man complaint I have. It just doesn't feel fluid. It feels like it's kind of breaking your pace, and it's something that I'm sure we could all adjust to, and with time it would probably become like, yeah, this is still Guilty Gear, this is fine. But it feels like an unnecessary change, because having the air dash have startup isn't going to help new players react way better to air dashes or interrupt them or do something like that. It just kind of adds a big symbol to say, hey, here's an air dash, which I would be fine with. I'd be totally cool if maybe the animation had the big, oh, here's the Devil May Cry double jump symbol, but just keep the startup out of it. I'm fine with giving more information to the player. If you want to have an animation that really, really makes sure the player is realizing, hey, this person is air dashing at you, cool. I think that's a perfectly fine change. The startup, I don't understand what it's going for. I don't know what it's trying to accomplish. Again, with that idea of appealing to new players, and it certainly is not appealing to those of us who've played Guilty Gear for a while, because it feels so clunky. And again, it makes the game feel stiff and rigid. And that's just something that I feel like no matter what you're trying to execute for system changes, you're not looking for these stiff, rigid moments when you're in the middle of a high-paced anime fighter. So air dash, I think, needs to be re-examined with what they're trying to do with it. Probably the biggest talking point, I would say, other than the Gatlings, for most people who've been involved with the beta, is a combination of the damage and the new wall break system. So these two I'm tying together for a reason. They're very intertwined. The high damage in this game seems designed to be that way because of the wall break system. For those of you who don't know, Guilty Gear Strive has a new mechanic where when someone is put in the corner, pretty much any move will plaster them against the wall. You get a wall stick. After you hit them with a set number of moves, 3, the next move you do, if you don't let them tech off the wall, is going to shatter the corner wall. And you're going to get this big flashy stage transition, and you go back to neutral. You literally go back to the space of a round start. This mechanic is interesting in theory, but I don't know what it's really adding with that same message we've been getting. And I know I'm saying this a lot and I'm repeating myself, but I want to get across that I'm trying to approach the design decisions from the messages Arc-Sys is giving, and not just me going, I don't like this, change it back, blah, old man feelings about games. The wall break system does one really big overstep, in my opinion, and that's that it removes the corner from a fighting game. If you win the corner in a fighting game in a 2D fighter, that's a big deal. That's you have outplayed your opponent in neutral or forced them back, and you've done your due diligence to earn what is the biggest point of advantage in a 2D fighting game. You have cornered your opponent. They lose a lot of movement options. They lose the ability to control space because now you're the only one who really gets to choose how much space is between you and the opponent. And that's such a... You got to have a really, really damn good reason to remove not just a key thing from Guilty Gear, a key thing from just 2D fighters in general. In addition to that, the wall break mechanic feels super unintuitive. There's varying rules for when the wall stick stays, when an opponent bounces off the wall, and a lot of times it's not even just, oh, this move wall bounces and these moves wall stick. It can be things like, oh, if you Gatling into this move, it's a wall bounce. But if you do it on its own, it's a wall stick. And then there's all these things where the wall has to repair itself for a set amount of time, and you can delay the shattering. It just doesn't feel intuitive in any way, shape, or form for a new player. It feels very arbitrary when you look up and go, oh, they're super stuck and the giant crack is in the wall. The next thing I do is going to break the wall. That part is well done. Like, it's very, very obvious that it's like, hey, you're out of wall moves. The next one is shattering and you're getting the transition and you're going back to neutral. But knowing when that's going to happen before you get there feels very unintuitive. I'm not going to call it inconsistent because there are clearly rules, and it needs some time for us to kind of learn the hard and fast, gates about when the wall sticks happen versus when they don't, and when you can abuse them for more damage. And right now, it's making a compound problem because this means damage has to be ginormous in this game. Because they've basically said, look, you're not getting the old school Okazeme. You're not going to be able to knock people down, put them in the mix, and whittle them down that way. You're not going to put someone in the corner and just basically never let them leave because you've played better offense than them and you don't give up your position. It's stuff just hurts because there is no corner anymore. Damage is outright preposterous at this point in the game. Wild throwing someone with soul, it doesn't matter if you've made them block anything. It does a third of their bar. Like, just one command grab, boom, on a character that is extremely mobile. Basic no-meter combos, when you do hit the wall, you're taking Half-Life with no effort. I mean, we're talking about people in the middle of the beta. There's no training mode in the beta, and people are already figuring out how to consistently two-touch people to death. With almost no optimization really being done yet, because we haven't had time. You know, it would be absolutely foolish to think anyone has optimized combos and effective damage with a couple of days in a beta. That's just silly. So you've committed to this idea of now the game is high damage, but that, again, completely contradicts the being friendly to beginners and being more simplified. Because now, instead of, oh, I eventually got pushed to the corner and I couldn't make my way out and I ended up losing the round, or this character with very strong mix-up knocked me down and I wasn't able to recollect myself. They mixed me up, kept me in their offense, and that was the round. Well, I understand the thought process that, hey, that doesn't feel good as a new player. You feel like you kind of made a mistake and then your opponent played solitaire and you didn't really get to have much of a chance. That's not true by any means when you're talking about more in-depth fighting gameplay, but I understand why a new player or a beginner player would feel that way. It feels very, very oppressive when you get cornered and can't leave, or when you get knocked down by an Okazeme character and can't get out of it. But now, instead of any of that, we just have you made one mistake, you're basically dead. Like, you are a small combo away from that round being a wrap. And that doesn't feel any better. That's not going to make someone feel good about getting into the game or learning from the ground up. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make errors, whether it's a mental error, an execution error, or just getting outplayed by your opponent. And if you if you get hit for 70% with minimal resources, that don't feel good. That's not going to encourage people to want to be like, oh, this game has definitely thought about how it's going to be more appealing to newer players and how we're simplifying systems. You've simplified things because now I don't need to learn super complex combos yet, because how complex does it need to be if I'm doing 70% off anything? If you make people block stuff in this game and get their risk gauge even remotely up at all, you can kill people. There's already tons of videos of Chip dying in a single combo. Like, damage is bonkers right now. And I see two ways you can go with this. If you are dead set on having the wall break mechanic be part of this game, and to this point it definitely feels like that is a key component in the developer's eyes, it needs to come with some more choice, in my opinion. There needs to be a very, very large reward for sacrificing your own corner and breaking that wall. It needs to be like a massive chunk of damage. The tension pulse boost is nice. That's a start. But it's not the corner. That's not an equivalent exchange, in my opinion. So I would like to see bigger reward for breaking the wall, but the ability to have way more choice as a player. Have specific moves that are designed. Their entire purpose is wall breaking. Like Tekken has wall bounce moves, and it's not like every Tekken character has 20 wall bounce moves. No, they usually have one or two. Do the same thing with this. Have one or two moves that are specifically all about breaking the wall, so that I can make the decision of, do I want to keep the corner and sacrifice the damage, the tension pulse, and whatever reward you want to tack onto it? Or am I just going to break the wall, take that huge chunk of damage, maybe it's enough to kill and end the round, and have that option? Options are good. It makes the gameplay more fulfilling. It's going to add depth without having more complications. You can simplify it. You can just have these one or two moves that are very blatantly designed to break the wall. And that makes it easy to understand. It simplifies your process, and you still get good depth and good choices. The other option is just remove the wall break system. Get rid of it. Tone the damage down. Let's get back to playing a standard 2D fighter without these stage transitions and move on with our lives. I personally, as the old fart that I am, would like to see that. But again, I'm very open to change. I'm very open to Arc-Sys doing things to make this more of a brand new game, something that appeals to different people and old players alike. And if the wall break system is going to be that, cool, but there's got to be some more fluidity and thought process to it, in my opinion. It feels like such a big punishment for winning the corner, opening someone up and getting your big damage in the corner, and then it's just gone. You are back to round start, and your opponent has a chance to breathe and possibly turn things around. You can get a hard knockdown off the wall break if you use a super, but that's a big resource investment, one. And two, it's a hard knockdown where you're still pretty far away and you're not going to get like a powerful mix-up out of it. So the wall break system, I think it's ill-contrived right now. It feels much more like a look at our cool transitions and we had this idea and we've proven we can implement it. But again, what's the reasoning? What's the thought process? What is this adding to the game? Whether it's, adding to it in, again, that message of being more simplified and offering things to new players, or adding in a mechanic that somehow improves upon the gameplay of Guilty Gear. And for me, it does neither of those, and it doesn't come close to doing either of those. So the wall break needs to be refined. Again, if you ask me my personal opinion, I say scrap it. I say remove the wall break system. Let's just play a 2D fighter and move on. But if it's going to stay in, it needs a lot of refinement, in my opinion. Next big issue I have gameplay-wise is throws. So throws are a hallmark of Guilty Gear. In any 2D fighter, obviously, but Guilty Gear has stuck with an old style throw, like the old Super Turbo style throw. It's one button, it comes out in one frame, and it's very powerful. Throws have always been an extremely powerful tool in Guilty Gear. But in this case, throws have, one, been moved off the heavy slash button to the dust button. Two, they're no longer one frame. And three, they have a whiff animation on them. So instead of getting a normal when you try to do a throw and don't get it, you get a full-scale whiff animation. This has a lot of problems for me, personally. And again, in that design philosophy. The one-button throw system, super easy to understand. It's very friendly to new players. It offers a very powerful, easy-to-use tool for dealing with people who just stand over you when they knock you down, and offers you a very easy tool to use to try and interrupt pressure when people are right on top of you but leave a gap. Instead, now we have something that is bound to the dust button, which it feels bad. I don't really understand why you would want to do it. I get the design process. The idea was they decided they wanted to have a whiff animation on throws. And they wanted to make sure there was you couldn't have overlap with characters who had forward heavy for a move, because then if you do forward heavy, well, you're going to get a whiff animation. So design-wise, I understand where they went with it, but I'm not sure. This is another one, like, why did this need change? What is this bringing to the table for that design message, or for we think this is a better way that Guilty Gear can be played? Because for me, it's neither. It doesn't feel good. Right now, trying for a forward throw feels suicidal. The whiff animation is counter hit all the way through it. If you whiff a throw, enjoy your 70% you just lost, because you're going to be dead. In addition, this also changes up air throws. Air throws are a very notable part of Guilty Gear. They're a powerful defensive tool. They're a stylish thing that really creates a lot of excitement and hype, whether you're playing just casually or in a big tournament. Air throws are a huge part of Guilty Gear in general, and they're now less powerful because it's not instant. It may not sound like a big deal to have throws be 2 or 3 frames. I'm not sure the exact startup on them now. I've heard 2 and 3, but I don't have a concrete answer on that. It may not sound like a big deal for a grab to go from 1 frame to 2, but it's huge. There is a massive difference for that, especially when you add in whiff animations, which there's also a whiff animation on air throws. again, old man in me just says the Guilty Gear throw system has been great. It's always worked well. It's always felt good. It flows with the speed and pace of the game, and offers a very easy to utilize defensive tool and powerful option for when you're pressuring or doing mix up. And switching this up, I don't think accomplishes much towards the good. It just feels like an arbitrary change for the sake of it. So this is another one where I don't really see a good way to just refine the new throw system. I feel like the best answer is just use what's worked for literally 2 decades of Guilty Gear. If it's not broke, don't fix it in this case. And I feel like this is one of those that changing it is not bringing anything good to the table. It's just bringing a thing to the table. Pardon me a moment. So, moving on to another issue with the gameplay, in my opinion, pace of play in general. So, Strive, as you've been watching this footage, is incredibly cinematic. There's a lot of hit stop. There's big cinematic screen shakes, especially on giant counters. You have the stage transitions. You have the cinematic supers, which have been around since Xrd. The thing is these new cinematic things happen so frequently that the pace of the game feels stilted now. There's so many times where things just kind of stop. When you hit one of those big counters on a level 4 or 5 move and you get the giant counter across the screen, which I originally thought was one of the worst design choices there was, it doesn't bother me near as much as I thought it would, but it's still... stuff stops. It's like getting the start of a danger time in Xrd. And it's really jarring. It can actually be hard to follow up those big, huge counters because the camera zooms in and you get this big, dramatic, wah, you've counter hit your opponent. But it breaks the pace of the play. It's not you see counter and you're like, all right, I countered. Here's how I get my maximum punish off of this. And go from there. You've got to account for this big, giant shift in gameplay. The wall breaks are another major contributing to this. The stage transitions, they're neat. They're very cinematic. They look impressive. Like, don't get me wrong, Arc-Sys makes beautiful things, and these models, this engine, and everything, it looks gorgeous. But I don't want my game to have this 2-3 second pause to basically take us back to round start when the round never ended. That feels so bad, and it breaks the pace of play down. So between, the big hit stops and big flashy camera things for counter hits, the stage transitions on wall break, and cinematic supers, now you have so many things that are really slowing down the pace of play in general, and just making it very staggered and very, very clunky. And that's not Guilty Gear, or that, in my opinion. Guilty Gear is smooth. It's fast. These games go. Once you get going, you are off and running, and you ain't slowing down until somebody takes a round. And this stuff just, individually, it's not bad. Like I said, the big counter hit is not nearly as problematic and painful to watch while you're playing as I thought it would be, but it's still distracting, and it still feels unnecessary. I get that part of this is the more cinematic and the more flashy stuff is, the more likely you are to draw in new players, to draw in players who've never really dabbled in Guilty Gear. So that's one of the things that is actually kind of consistent with Arc-Sys' message that they've been giving us during development. But it just doesn't do enough to the good side to really justify it. I don't mind keeping one of these things, or maybe even two, but you've got to find a better way to make it flow, because it just feels very, very breaking of the pace, and that's not something you ever want in a fighting game. So pace of play is something that needs a lot of polish. The game looks great. Like, the game is looking beautiful, but its presentation needs a lot of work. I've done a lot of harping on what I think are issues. I do want to talk about things that are going the right direction, because I don't want to make it sound like I'm all gloom and doom about Strive. That's not what this video is meant to be. This is meant to be constructive ideas and thoughts on a beta that is very, very early in development. But something that is amazing is the new Roman cancel system. New Roman cancel system feels fantastic to use. It adds in what I feel is the single most iconic part of Guilty Gear. Roman cancels have appeared in many Arc-Sys games now, but they started in Guilty Gear. The ability to spend 50% meter and just be like, nope, I've recovered from this. I get to do what I want now. It's a neat homogenization of the old system from the XX series and the YRC system from Xrd. You have multiple types of Roman cancels. They act as a form of hit stop when you're close to the opponent. You have the ability to maneuver in various directions when you Roman cancel. They've done a great decision in homogenizing a system by removing dead angle, which for those of you who are not familiar with Guilty Gear is Guilty Gear's version of an alpha counter, spending meter to basically do a move in block stun that can interrupt your opponent and knock them off of you. They've changed that to now it's just the yellow Roman cancel. You hit the Roman cancel buttons, you flash, and you push your opponent away from you, and it gives you breathing room. That is a perfect example of we want to simplify systems and make things less clunky to understand. Well, that nails it. That's a perfect idea of doing that. The problem that I have is that Roman cancel hasn't been explained at all in any of the dev talks we've had, of any of the demonstrations. They did these amazing character videos to kind of show you the basics of how their moves work, how they play, to get people ready for the beta, and they were great. Really good tool for not even just beginner players, but just people who've played Guilty Gear but just want to get a view of what the version of their character or character they're looking at to play feels like in Strive. Awesome. Perfect decision. Love it. Why would you not talk about one of the most iconic system mechanics in the game? Especially one that has been vastly overhauled and has a lot of depth and various ways to use that if you don't study, you're not going to have any concept of how the different Roman cancels work without a lot of experimentation. That's a big deal. And I feel like Arc-Sys really dropped the ball on that. This is something that they need to be really highlighting. The Roman cancel system feels so good and so fun to use. It does the things that I think Guilty Gear does best, which is it offers a lot of freedom to your pressure, your combos, your mix-ups. It offers options. Options are good in fighting games. It feels good when you have multiple ways to approach a situation. And it has a satisfying cinematic approach. The clock rolling and the slowdown while you are able to act more than your opponent, this feels great. It all feels really, really good to use in a match. And that needs to be hammered on. That you need to highlight how this new Roman cancel system is really well thought out and is really, reminding people that even if we've changed a bunch of stuff, this is still Guilty Gear. This is going to be a Guilty Gear game, and you're going to feel like you're playing the next iteration of Guilty Gear. So, love the system, but it's one of those like, why are we not getting an in-depth breakdown? Why are we not getting tutorials? Anything that's talking about how good this system is and how to utilize it. It just seems like a weird thing to overlook, in my opinion. So, those are kind of all the thoughts I have from the gameplay perspective. I think Arc-Sys is very much just trying shit. I think they're kind of throwing stuff at the wall, trying some new ideas. They want to see if this works. They want to see if people are receptive to it. And for me right now, if this was the beta of a game that's coming out in 2 months and we're basically getting the final, testing phase in, I would have a lot of concerns about Guilty Gear Strive. I would not feel great about where it is. I would not be near as excited as I should be to play what is maybe the most important series to me personally that exists. But the good news is a few things. One, this game is very far off. Like I said, they've concretely said, late 2020 at the earliest. So you got 7 or 8 months to continue working on it, tweaking it, changing things. And honestly, no one's going to be shocked if this gets pushed back into 2021. Not just from development time, but obviously everything going on with COVID-19 is causing delays to everything in the world. You know, video games are not an exception to that. And I don't think this game taking longer to cook and being refined is going to be a bad thing at all. The other thing is that Arc-Sys has shown they will listen to feedback. People said this UI is ugly. It's got to be different, man. This is bad. You know, from the builds at Arc Revo and the early demo builds, and they acknowledge, they're like, all right, people didn't like the UI. We need to make some tweaks to it. We need to make risk easier to find. We can do that. The problem is they didn't go nearly far enough. The UI still feels really bad, but they did show that they are listening. And the biggest thing that Arc-Sys has shown they're listening to feedback is they confirmed rollback netcode. People have been harping, we want rollback netcode. We want netcode to be good in this game. We want to actually play good high-level Guilty Gear in an online environment, and we need rollback netcode to do that. And they've done it. They said it's going to be in the game. They're working on the development. It was not available for this demo, and let me tell you, it showed. But now the thing is you have to continue that goodwill and that faith you're building up. And I want to encourage everyone, if you participated in the beta, fill out the survey and please be thorough. Think out your critiques, your responses. Give examples and specifics of why you think what you do about various mechanics and gameplay. Give your thoughts on the non-gameplay stuff, the UI, the lobbies, all that stuff. But be constructive, be intelligent about it. Doing stuff like just going in and going, I hate all this, it's different, it feels bad, that doesn't get anything done. That's not going to help anyone make systematic changes that can improve the game long term. We need constructive criticism. So please, if you're gonna give feedback, make it worthwhile feedback. Don't stagnate this back and forth that Arc-Sys is trying to have with us as the player base. They've shown they're willing to listen to us. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to continue listening to us. So I don't know. I have a lot of personal gripes with Strive as it is, but I also accept the fact that this game is so early in development and so unrefined at this point that's okay. I've said it since Arc Revo last year. I am shocked that we have gotten to play this game this early. I cannot, for the life of me, think of a fighting game that has been put into players' hands so early, you know, barring stuff like way early test builds on, you know, an E3 floor or something like that. Something where you actually get to sit down and really start dissecting it and figuring out the ins and outs. This is kind of unprecedented. I am very, very surprised we have gotten as much time with this as we already have. So let's see where it goes. There's a couple things I have gripes with that I didn't go over yet. The teching system and some other stuff, but I don't feel like those are the biggest things yet. I'll probably talk about those in later videos, and this has already gotten way longer than I intended, so if you stuck around to listen to my dumbass rambling this on, thank you. I appreciate it. But no, it's a beta. It's a long ways from being done. We'll see where it goes, and I hope Arc-Sys continues to listen to the feedback and continues tailoring the game to not only what their vision is of a new Guilty Gear, but what players are hoping to get out of it too, because that's, at the end of the day, we're going to be the ones who pony up our hard-earned cash to buy it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the next version of this is, what kind of changes they implement, what kind of feedback they take into the equation, and we'll go from there. I am not normally a big YouTube person. Most of my stuff is on my Twitch channel, but if this is the kind of thing you enjoyed, let me know. I'm down to do more videos like this once in a while. I'm never going to be a YouTuber by any stretch. It's not going to be something you're not going to see heavily edited and polished videos out of me, but in terms of doing educational stuff and talking about Guilty Gear tutorials and stuff down the line. That's something I'd like to do. So if this is something you dug, let me know. Give me a hit in the comments and tell me what you think. But for now, there'll be one more day of net play early in the morning tomorrow, and then we'll see where Arc-Sys goes from here and what they have in store for us. So thank you for stopping by and listening. If you enjoy my stupid voice and my thoughts on fighting games, feel free to drop by my Twitch channel. I stream for a living, and I do a lot of stuff outside of fighting games as well. So come say hi if you've never stopped by before. So until then, all of you, I hope you take care. Please stay safe. Take care of yourselves. Wash your damn hands. And I'll catch you on the next one. So take care, everybody.